Hey up everybody, welcome back to the I'll Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be doing my final Velogames review of the year, and I'm going to be looking at the women's side of Velogames. This was something which I didn't really cover this much this year in terms of videos, just because I was trying to get myself calibrated into women's racing, trying to understand it a bit better, and I feel that now going into next year I'll be able to provide some better advice. So expect women's videos to be more prevalent on this channel next year. It's just that this year I was just trying to get used to it all. So we're going to be covering the classics firstly, and we're also going to be covering some of the stage races. And I generally found that the women's racing was where I did some of my better results throughout the year, so that's really good to see. So we're going to start with the classics. The classics were a very successful series of events for me. We finished in 22nd out of 1,562 overall. Ghent Velogames was probably one of my worst ones. We did have Balsamo as like the winner, and Kopecky and Anderson, but Vibers wasn't really there, so it was kind of probably a smart move just going with Vibers, but it just wasn't particularly fortunate on the day. Dwars Vlaanderen, pretty good, a little bit better, 274th, getting some decent riders in there, in the likes of Pfeiffer Georgie and also Bastianelli. I kind of backed a lot of DSM in this race. Though Ronde van Vlaanderen, this went even better. We finished 121st, so we had Kopecky, Van der Broek Black as well. Vollering got the assists for those. We didn't have Van Vleuten, which was a bit of a trend this year that you'll see, is that I probably didn't back Van Vleuten enough. And we had Mackay in there as well. Ronde, a good series of results there on the men's and the women's side as well. Scheldeple's 161st. Again, it's just a bit of a sprinter lottery, but going with Vibers and Consonni was a pretty good move. Amstel Gold, we had Vollering, and I think, she won, so we finished 100th. So we're actually trending pretty nicely upwards here. But Chien van Anrooy, of course, she's doing really well in the cyclocross at the moment. She was probably one of the best 6-pointers that you could go with. I expect her to cost quite a bit more into the next season. But then Nivea Doma and Moulin Passio as well, just picking up some nice other top 10s in that race. The Brabant Sipel, again, a little bit worse, down to about 400th overall. Nivea Doma, Lippert, Van Anrooy again. I'm not sure why I went with Balsamo. I think I was perhaps overrating her climbing abilities, so probably need to be a little bit more sensible sometimes in these predictions. Paris-Roubaix, 134th. Just some nice solid ones here. But we just had some really good kind of all-round riders. I don't think we had the winner, but it was just a pretty good race all around. La Flèche Wallonne, again, pretty good just because we had the winner, Cavalli. We also had Van Vleuten, who finished in second place, Nivea Doma and Lippert. It was definitely a race which got shredded like pretty early, and I think that I'm very happy with this, finishing 54th. It was only really like Blanca Vas who really didn't score, but we did have another good result in the form of like Cavalli, Moulin Passio, Vollering, and just some other people generally finishing inside the top 20. So really good from the classics. 22nd overall. I think it'll be quite hard to beat that next year, but I'll definitely try my best. And then on to the stage races. So we've got the Zulia women's race, which at this point I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of like throwing riders in there that I kind of knew the names of. 280th overall. Vollering, Baril, Cavalli, all pretty good riders, but nothing too spectacular there, just 280th. I think that everybody was still getting their eye into women's racing at this point of the year. The Ride London Classic, I think I finished in second overall in this race, behind Andy the Pelotonian, the other person who does some really good previews on Velogames. And this was just a series of picking some pretty decent sprinters. 6-pointers like Borgheshi were really worth their weight in gold. Then we went on to the actual women's tour, which wasn't great because we finished 800th out of like 1,300. Lacked some of the big riders like Longo Borghini, so definitely need to try and back the bigger riders in the future. I did think that perhaps like Moulin Passio would do a bit better. Perhaps I just didn't back the GC riders enough and I went a bit too heavy on the sprinters. Then the Giro Donne, pretty good inside the top 500. Balsamo, Ludwig, Faulkner, Longo Borghini, again another good one, but I again just blacked the people who really get the top points. So I definitely need to try and recalibrate a bit, and rather than going for a quantity approach sometimes, go for just the pure quality riders. The Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, the inaugural event of this, pretty good actually. In fact, no, really good. I finished 20th overall in this race, getting like Voss, Kopecky, Vollering, Labous. Perisco was an absolute like goldmine for this race. Thought I'd get a bit more out of someone like Grace Brown. Guazzini was good for a 6-pointer. Van Androoy, I think I expected a bit more of, just because of how she did in the Ardennes at 8 points. I think there was probably somebody better I could go on with, and also Norskar didn't perhaps live up to what I was expecting, but 20th overall is just really good, and I was really happy with that. Then on to probably the best result for me for the entire year, which is the first time that I've won a Velogames competition, and that is the inaugural Tour of Scandinavia. There it is in all of its glory. First out of 1,234 people, moved us up to third overall, and we had Voss, Costa, Neve Bradbury was probably the defining rider who saved me and got me into the lead, and this was just probably such a great moment for me to be able to finally win a Velogames competition after so many years of getting quite close. So really happy about that, and hopefully we can try and win another one or two next year. The Simac Ladies Tour, at this point I feel like I'd understood women's racing, and I think that I played a very calculated game for this race, and it worked out because I finished 8th overall. I went with time trialers Marcus and Coron Lago and Henderson, and that really paid off. Of course, Boissuit didn't really get the points which I was wanting. Vibers is just like a must-have namestay in your team, and perhaps I was thinking that Capone would do a bit better, and Baker is like a good time trialist but didn't perhaps do as great. But at this point we moved into first place in the Women's Cycling Championship, and unfortunately I did lose the lead of this in the next two races. I really messed up in these. So firstly, the Karatsit Challenge, I didn't pick Annemiek van Vleuten for whatever reason, bestowed me, and I moved down to third, and it was just really a bad competition for me. 850th is not good enough. Vollering, Ludwig, Niewiadoma I thought would be the three core riders, but I should have just gone with Van Vleuten and just been a bit more sensible about that, so that's really disappointing. And then in Romandy we dropped from third place in the championship down to 5th. So again, a bit of a kick in the teeth. I did finally go with Van Vleuten here though, but she wasn't even the most highest scoring rider. Alexis Sierra was a pretty good one. I backed Nadbury again, but she didn't do that great. Veronica Ewers, and generally just a load of missed riders who didn't really work out. And unfortunately, we dropped to 5th place, which is a bit annoying because I think that if I would have just backed Van Vleuten a couple of times this year, so that's really annoying. But I think that next year I've learned some things this year, and I'll take those into next year, and I think we'll be a lot more competitive. So expect more women's Velogames content next year because I now understand it, so I think I can provide some decent advice to you lot. And let me know how you did in the women's racing down below, and all that's left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!